Are you, are you good for attendance, Gretchen, or do you want us to do a roll call?
I can certainly do it if you need me to. I mean, I'm good on who is here. I don't need to call it, if that's what you mean.
Yes.
Cool.
Okay, we're good.
Thank you. All right. So I don't have the emergency statement, but I can say call the meeting to order. It's 7:03 p.m. It's the 16th of March. Welcome, everyone. So for the emergency statement, Sandy, do you have the language for that?
Brian, do you have that pulled up, ready to go?
Yes, I do. This meeting of the Citizen Transportation Advisory Committee is being held pursuant to Code of Virginia, Section 2.2-3708.2, which allows a public body to hold electronic meetings when the locality in which it is located has declared a local state of emergency and the catastrophic nature of the emergency makes it impracticable or unsafe to assemble a quorum in a single location. And the purpose of the meeting is to provide for the discharge of its lawful purposes, duties, and responsibilities. This meeting is being held via electronic video and audio means through Zoom online meetings and is accessible to the public. There will be an opportunity for the public comment during that portion of the agenda. Notice has been provided to the public through notice at the TJPDC offices, to the media, website posting, and agenda. The meeting minutes will reflect the nature of the emergency. The meeting was held by electronic communication means and the type of electronic communication means by which the meeting was held. A recording of the meeting will be posted at www.tjpdc.org within 10 days of the meeting.
Thank you. Without further ado, I guess this matters from the public. I don't see any names that I'm not familiar with. Is that correct? All right, so assuming no matters from the public, we can move ahead with the approval of the draft meeting minutes. So, I guess I first ask any questions or any kind of concerns about what we had from our notes from last session in January. And thanks, Stuart, for presiding over that. No? All right. Any motion to approve then?
Yeah, move to approve.
Thank you, Lee. Anyone second?
Second.
Thank you, Travis. All right. Anyone want to say, I'm going to go the opposite of the normal way. Anyone want to say no to it? Any nays? No nays? All right. So any yays? Awesome.
Yay.
It looks like it's carried. All right. We'll go that way. All right. Yeah, it looks like we approved the draft meeting minutes, Sandy. So we're ready to go to the next piece, which is our election for this 2022 to 2023 committee chair and vice chair. Ryan, is there any details you'd like to cover on that?
No, Mr. Chair, basically the committee is, according to bylaws, needs to appoint a chair and vice chair at your first meeting of the calendar year. So tonight, you all will vote for a chair and vice chair.
Great. Anyone want to, any names that we've collected at this point, or are we going to do it live here like we've done the past 2 years that I'm aware of when I watched the past 3?
Yeah, Mr. Chair, I think we will do it live here.
All right. All right. Just thinking around committee chair and vice chair, anyone interested in, anyone want to run down of what it includes and what it entails before you throw your name in the ring? Or are
It's
we all
very
clear on it?
intense with a lot of outside work that's involved with it. Just kidding. It's not. It's a pretty simple lift for anybody. You're not getting in too far over your head.
Kristen, it may be helpful if you just kind of briefly outline what the chair.
Yeah, sure.
does.
So the chairman role is what you're seeing right now. It's running through and facilitating these sessions that we have every other month, and making sure that we just stay on the next agenda item to the next, and then asking the right people who are noted in the meeting minutes to take over the topics, and also in prior to each call, it's normal for us to, the committee chair and the vice chair to review the agenda and make sure that, hey, is there any kind of questions we have or anything that was mentioned perhaps in a prior session that we want, that the staff maybe had mentioned that they wanted to cover? Basically just double check the agenda, and then you can provide feedback if you see any. Usually it's a very smooth process. Only a couple of times have we ever like proffered any ideas. So that usually happens around a week or two before each session, and it's just one email or two. So that's one thing. And also for the vice chair and committee chair, you could be asked to, and you do have a seat on the MPO, something that as the chairman and vice chair, you become a member of that that group. And so that's a role that you want to take advantage of, and provide a visible piece of CTAC to the MPO. That's a good way to do it. That's, I think, I'm covering most of it. Anything else, Sandy, or? Okay, cool.
This is Stuart. I would just add, occasionally you're asked to support or represent CTAC in a related transportation working group. So once in a while there's something addition, but it's actually.
Yeah, you've done that. Yeah, Stuart, I remember
Yeah.
that. Yeah. I think that really sums it up though. It's pretty light. I've done it twice with Stuart at this point for 2 years, and I'm ready to put the reins down. So welcoming anyone who would be willing to take committee chair or vice chair. So I guess we could start off with who would like to take on committee chair? Raise your name, say hello.
All right, I'll throw my hat in the ring for what it's worth.
All right, Lee. Anyone else willing? Going once, going twice. All right, cool, Lee. If there's only one, it's the only one Highlander. All right, and then vice chair, who would like to join Lee in this adventure for the next year? Basically having to cover if Lee's not able to, or if he's not feeling well, or what have you.
Lee, you're appointed by Albemarle, right?
That is correct.
So it might be helpful if somebody who either was appointed by Charlottesville or the MPO is in the vice chair.
Good idea.
I can continue if no one wants to do it, but only if we don't have any volunteers. I mean, it's fun and fulfilling and worthwhile. So I encourage someone to do it, but if not, I can continue.
Anyone want to rival Stuart?
I'll probably serve as vice chair for next year.
Okay, thanks, Donna. All right, we're staying with Stuart. Stuart, thank you for the offer. All right, cool. Well, if that's the case, we have Lee and Stuart taking over the roles. Well, Stuart continuing on.
Oh, I thought Donna was taking on for next year.
Next year or this year? Donna, which one? Did I misinterpret?
Sorry, whichever session we're, is it?
Oh, this coming one? Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Yeah, there you go. Stuart, then never mind if that's the case. Donna, thank you.
Tristan, should we tell them what's actually required of them now?
Yeah. First you get a saw and you get your arm off. No, yeah, it's what we just said, basically getting the agenda together, that kind of thing. And I can send you some handy notes that Jessica sent me a long time ago after when I took over from Travis. She gave me some bullet points how to run these things, and it kind of helped me. So Lee, I can send it to you, and Donna, if you're ever wondering, it's not difficult. It's just a nice little reminder every 2 months. All right, cool. Well, I guess that concludes this. Thanks, Donna and Lee. Sandy, anything else, or Ryan, before we move forward?
I think
I was gonna say we should probably introduce Ryan and explain why why I keep adding things over to him. So Ryan's been at the PDC for how long now, Ryan? Like 6 weeks?
yeah, 6 weeks.
Yep. 6 weeks. So he was hired as a transportation planner, and he is going to be supporting the MPO, including CTAC and MPO TAC and a lot of the projects within the MPO. So from now on, he's going to be kind of the staff contact coordinating this. I'll still be at the meetings. And then anything else you want to say to introduce yourself or give your background, Ryan?
Sure. Sandy, I started off at the TJPDC many years ago, and worked at the City of Charlottesville for a few years and in North Carolina. And I'm appreciative of Ms. Christine Jacobs and Ms. Sandy Shackelford for giving me the opportunity to be here again. So thank you.
Awesome, welcome.
And then we
Just-
also have Ruth Emmerich, who just recently joined us, and she is the new Chief Operating Officer for the TJPDC. And Ruth, you can go ahead and introduce yourself if you'd like to.
Hi, everyone.
I wonder if we need to have a vote on the chairman, a formal vote, and not that it's, I know it's unanimous, but it needs that for the records.
We probably should.
All right.
Quality, I understand, but
I don't blame you. All right. All right. So for Lee Condor taking over the chairman role, do we have any motion for that?
I'll make a motion to nominate Lee as chairman of the committee.
Awesome.
I'll
Thank you. Anyone
second.
second? Thank
Second.
you, Patrick. Thank you. Cool. We'll go on the vocals here. On yays, anyone want to say yay?
Yay.
Yay.
Cool. And any nays? Cool. All right. That carries over. Lee's officially it. Formalized. And for the vice chair, anyone want a motion for Donna?
I'll move to approve. Oh,
Cool.
I'll move to approve Donna as vice chair.
Thanks, Travis. Look, it's a tie. And as far as for seconds,
I'll second it.
thank you, Marty. All right. So let's do the yays. Anyone want to say yes? Please say.
Yeah.
Yay.
I'm looking at the yellow bars, by the way, if you're wondering what I'm looking for. Okay. Anyone want to say nay to Donna? All right, good. I think we're good. We're formalized. Donna is vice chair. Thank you all. And thanks, Marty. I think it's good to do everything formally, right? If we're going to do the dance, might as well take the right steps. All right. So if that concludes that, welcome, Ruth and Ryan. And I guess we're ready to get started with the next topic, which is round 5 smart scale transportation projects. I think, Ryan, if you're ready to kick us off into that.
Sure.
Thank you.
I will try to share my screen here. Okay, are you all able to see my screen?
I am.
Yes.
Okay. So on February 28th of 2022, the MPO city staff, Albemarle County staff, and the Virginia Department of Transportation held a public webinar, which featured an overview of roughly 12 projects that the MPO was considering to undertake for round 5 of Smart Scale. We had approximately 75 members of the public to attend. So far to date, there have been 40 comments received, either through the website, email to staff, and over 800 comments for the Ravana River Bicycle and Bridge pedestrian crossing, which is outstanding. Sandy spearheaded that project. Here's a comprehensive map that just shows the general locations of those 12 projects. You will note, I don't know if you all can see my cursor. This here is 5th Street Extended, where both the city, the county, and MPO are pursuing projects on that corridor. Avon Street is here. The Ravana River Bicycle and Pedestrian Bridge crossing is here. The District Avenue Roundabout is here. Unless anyone from the committee has any specific questions, I won't go into too much detail. But I believe in your packet, there was the entire webinar presentation. What I have on my screen and what I'm showing tonight are the 4 projects that the MPO will be applying for. So what you have on your screen now is a map that shows the project on 5th Street extended for the City of Charlottesville, which will be from Cherry Avenue to Harris Road. The MPO project, which will be from Harris Road to basically the city limits. And the county project, which is from Stagecoach Road to Ambrose Commons. And this is a sketch showing some of the proposed improvements for the 5th Street project that the MPO will be undertaking. It involves bicycle accommodation, pedestrian accommodations as well, a median adjustment, and I'll just briefly read the project description. This project will add a southbound turn lane into 5th Street Station Parkway from 5th Street, a median adjustment at the Willoughby Shopping Center, and a left turn lane mid-block from 5th Street traveling northbound. The shared use path between the 5th Street Harris Road intersection to Holiday Inn intersection is also proposed. What's shown on your screen now is the Avon Street multimodal improvements from Druid Avenue to 5th Street Station Parkway.
Ryan, before you move on to that, can I just ask a question about the 5th Street
Sure.
projects? Would you mind, so looking at the different diagrams, would you mind kind of explaining how, like, as someone walking on the sidewalk and then in the bike lanes, how you kind of progress through the county to MPO to city project? Like, it looks like it's a separated bike lane in some parts, maybe not in others. Just trying to get a sense of how, like, let's say you're biking or walking, how do you maneuver through these 3 sections?
Yeah, sure. So the diagram on the right, which shows the section, as you can see, there's the in fact, it's kind of hard to read here, but you have the 2 travel lanes at 11 feet, and then you've got the left turn lane to go into 5th Street Station Parkway. This represents the southbound travel way. On the right, I believe, represents the northbound, and you have the, of course, the median here. This right here is the sidewalk that's being shown. So I'll go back to this map. So essentially, the shared use paths will be along here. And you've got the improvements here. There are already, I believe, existing sidewalks in the city section here. There is I believe, a gap in the sidewalk network as you cross over the interstate here, which at some point will be addressed, possibly in a future smart scale application. And I don't know if there's anyone here from NCDOT that can explain sort of the travel movements and the median cuts, but here is where in fact, this diagram may best show the left turn lane, the median adjustment into the Willoughby Shopping Center, which is here. This area here is Fifth Street Station Parkway. So this intersection is being improved here. And I believe that that's the crux of the improvements.
So it sounds like after these are done, there'll be sidewalks on both sides except for that one part going over the interstate. There'll just be like a gap that needs to be filled in the future.
Yes.
I can speak to that for a second, and that's just because they're pursuing the diverging diamond right there, and so they don't want to do any construction in that area, knowing that there's going to be, you know, an additional project coming on board. So that will either be addressed as part of that project or will be looked at once the diverging diamond is in place.
Thank you.
Okay, here's what's shown on your screen is Avon.
I also have a question about that Fifth Street section.
Sure.
You mentioned the left turn opening, which looks like that lower left diagram there. Inside the smaller circle down there. Is that so people can turn left coming out of the shopping center, or will people turn left into the shopping center? What's going on there?
Yes, that's for people turning into the shopping center.
So, okay, and I can't tell on the diagram's too small there. Do they?
It's that yellowish color. On the northbound, it's here.
No, I'm on the small. You've got your cursor on the larger circle. I'm referring to the smaller circle.
Yes. Now this is into the Willoughby Shopping Center.
Yeah, that's what I'm addressing. So is northbound traffic turning left into the shopping center, or does that just enable the shopping center people to turn left in order to go northbound, which they can't do?
No, I think this is restricted. So if you're coming out of the shopping center, you have to proceed south.
Okay.
This median improvement is for folks traveling northbound to get into the shopping center.
And is there a
From my understanding,
and stack lane there for them, or will they just do that out of the passing lane?
No, there's a dedicated left. So, and it looks like there's room for some stacking,
Okay.
some staging of vehicles.
My image is just too small to see that. Okay, and then how about is that the only thing that's going to change in that median strip along there?
Yeah, Patrick, the reason they did that is because they eliminated the left turn lane northbound at the intersection that's across from Fifth Street Station entrance, so that they could accommodate a second left turn lane into the Fifth Street Station southbound. So that was the reason they did that.
I see. So that's the other change there. Okay, thanks.
Any more questions about Fifth Street Multimodal? Okay. This is a sketch showing Avon Street multimodal improvements from Druid Avenue to Fifth Street Station Parkway. I believe the sketch actually stops at Palatine, but there will be some bicycle and pedestrian accommodations through this section. And I believe some road widening on the west side. And I'll just briefly read the project description. This project was developed This project will develop a package of multimodal transportation improvements along Avon Street between Druid Avenue and Fifth Street Station Parkway. Avon Street revision study was completed by Albemarle County in 2020. Bicycle and pedestrian facility needs were identified in the Charlottesville Bicycle and Pedestrian Master Plan. Improvements include bicycle and pedestrian facilities, road widening on the west side of Avon Street, and the undergrounding a drain and stormwater retention treatment. And of course, the county also has a project further south. Any questions about Avon Street?
This is Stuart. Could you just go back to that aerial map and orient? Where is Wegmans? Where would that be in this picture? I'm just trying to get oriented real quick.
Yes.
It'd be off the top.
Yeah, it's off
Up
the
at the
map.
top.
It's kind of off the top left corner.
Got it. Okay, thank you.
Any more questions about Avon?
Yeah, I wonder if I could
Yeah.
ask, how did the MPO pick this one among others? So maybe it's a more general question. What was the criteria for the MPO picking its 4 projects? Because I don't.
Yeah, we had a whole process that was identified, but basically we met with staff, and the criteria that we used was really looking at projects that would benefit both localities that had already been through a planning process that involved public input or public process at this point. So we wanted to look at things that were already in a pipeline, that already had some level of public support, and that would have benefits to both Charlottesville and Albemarle. We're sort of where we started. And then we went through a process of reviewing what some of those projects would look like, at least as far as choosing the general areas and the general projects. And then sort of refining what specific improvements were looked at was really more of something that was just discussed among technical staff to figure out where there was opportunity to coordinate between initiatives on the localities.
Okay, thanks, Sandy.
I had a quick question about the connectivity of the bicycle lane network. So this, I guess the limits of this project on the northern end, if I recall correctly, connects to a bike lane on that already exists. But what about on the southern end? Is there any connectivity to bicycle infrastructure on Fifth Street Station Parkway or further south?
No, and we had talked initially about potentially going down. I mean, I think the sidewalks, if I recall correctly, start again going into the Fifth Street Station development. So we had talked about whether to extend it that far down or not. I think the concern is just that the longer the project goes, the more expensive it's going to be, the less competitive it would be for, the smart scale process. So that might be the next iteration if we're successful with funding for this round, to look at extending it even further, but that would be the ultimate goal.
Okay. Yeah, I've noticed actually quite a few cyclists using this route to go all the way south of 64, surprisingly, and it's not a super bike friendly route.
Good point. I think to speak to the other end of that, the pedestrian side of it, once completed, I think there's almost 1 mile of sidewalk that will be constructed if this project comes to fruition. So you've got almost 5,000 linear feet of new sidewalk as well. Okay. District Avenue Roundabout is at the intersection of Hydraulic Road and Cedar Hill Road. Basically, it's the construction of a roundabout at this intersection here. This here's hydraulic. Sorry, this is hydraulic. This is district. This is Cedar Hill Road. And I believe there will be a restricted, a pork shop put in place here to help channel traffic coming off of Cedar Hill Road. This project will improve vehicular movement at the intersection with Hydraulic Road, Cedar Hill Road, along with bicycle and pedestrian safety and mobility accommodations. The project will also include a pork chop island to restrict direct access onto off Roundabout from Cedar Hill Road. And I think I saw where approximately 15,000 vehicles travel through this intersection from VDOT's average annual daily traffic count program. So there will be some bicycle and pedestrian accommodations.
So it looks like for the Cedar Road access, like if you're coming from Cedar, you can only turn right, but can you also not turn right onto Cedar Road from the roundabout?
That's a good question. I would probably have to defer to VDOT on that, but from the looks of this diagram, it looks like that you could not.
Yeah, I don't know that Chuck's on. Michael's here, Barnes. He has a new position that's going to be supporting VDOT, but Michael's new, so I don't know that he can speak to the specifics of that either. But yeah, I think there was some pretty significant public outreach that was done as part of the hydraulic small area plan, and that was the preference of the community that lived off of Cedar Hill Road, because they were concerned about having their road connected directly to the roundabout and that being used as a through route to get to that shopping center. But I believe you're right. I think it was Travis that made that comment that you wouldn't be able to turn onto Cedar Hill from hydraulic. You'd have to find a different route to access that road.
Yeah, well, Chuck did say, though, that the design is incomplete at this point, so there may be some accommodation if you wanted to. Yeah, because right now there's no way to get to Cedar Hill Road. So, yeah, you can leave Cedar Hill Road, but you can't get into it. So I'm thinking that that's going to change. This is a preliminary design, and Chuck emphasized that.
I can speak. Years ago, I worked with the rezoning for that shopping center. And at that time, the city was the neighborhood was very against trying to make allow traffic to move from the shopping center southward into the neighborhood. And this particular design is trying to allow for an exit out of the neighborhood onto hydraulic, but not to allow it back in. And I take this 2 seconds here. My name is Michael Barnes. I've worked in the community for about 20 years. Past 3, I've been representative of VDOT and the funding that goes to the city for various infrastructure projects like Belmont Bridge, West Main Street, et cetera. And I've recently moved from the sort of that plan design and construction component into this planning section. So I'm excited to be working with you all in the future. And if I can help you, please feel free to reach out to me. Thank you.
Thanks, Michael and Sandy. It's just good to know about the community concerns with the cut through traffic. That definitely makes more sense with the design now. So.
Any more questions regarding the District Avenue Roundabout? And the last MPO project is the Ravana River Bicycle and Pedestrian Bridge Crossing project. This project will provide a critical bicycle and pedestrian linkage between the City of Charlottesville and the County of Albemarle, connecting 2 existing trails on the east side of the Ravana River. The project was identified in the Campo Long Range Transportation Plan and the Jefferson Area Bike and Pedestrian Plan. Feasibility study was completed by VHB in 2020 with 2 potential design options developed for consideration. Any questions regarding the Ravana River Bridge?
I have a question, Ryan. So there were some surveys that went out recently, and I provided feedback on those, I'm sure, as well as everyone else here. When are we going to see those results, or have you guys had a chance to review them? Just curious if there's been any movement between, say, for instance, the different spans, all that kind of stuff that was in those surveys.
Yeah, we've gotten 800. We got 833 results. There is a thank you, Kareem. Kareem just posted. There is a report that that we completed. That was kind of a draft. I have a more finalized version that will be posted with the MPO materials. But just a really quick high level overview of what those results revealed is that the highest priorities that were identified by people who took the survey, the number 1 priority as far as what we should factor in as far as the placement of a bridge was connecting to existing pedestrian networks. And the reason we focus on the pedestrian connectivity is because there isn't any bicycle infrastructure at either of the locations or any of the travel routes already. So the pedestrian connectivity was available. So that one was prioritized. The second highest priority was access to recreational amenities, so things like parks and trails. And then the third highest priority was maintaining Riverview Park as a naturalized area. And then the priority that was actually had the least amount of respondents that indicated that it should be prioritized was connecting directly to economic development. And the results as far as the preferences between the two, we asked for people to rate each of the locations on a 5-star scale. And so it's fairly consistent with the feedback we got on priorities that there was a preference for the Chesapeake Bridge landing, which looking at the slide is the more northern landing that goes along Riverview Park over the Woolen Mills site. And the difference was, I think it was an average of 3.98 stars for the Chesapeake Street location versus 3.4 stars for the East Market Street location for the placement. And then as far as the design preference, at both locations, people seem to prefer the cable stay bridge design, which is shown on the top image if you're looking at the images of the bridge design structures. But there was a stronger preference for the cable stayed design at the Chesapeake Street location versus the East Market Street location, which also seems to be consistent with feedback that we got through the stakeholder advisory committee and the public webinar, just because the location at Chesapeake Street along the river is along kind of an open portion of the river with this really beautiful view shed that has this really nice, experience for people to see the open river. So people like that, seem to like that location a little bit better, but we're also more concerned about the visual disruption of the bridge at that site. So they wanted a bridge that was less visually heavy, I guess, at that site overall. So that's kind of a summary of the public feedback that we heard. But if you have any specific questions, I'm happy to answer those as well.
That's great. Thanks, Sandy, for all that.
Yeah.
Sounds like aesthetics on the stay bridge. That's cool. All right. Yeah, thanks for that. Only question I would have is one that I actually posed, probably annoyingly to those who actually had to read them. I wrote for the one down on the southern side near Woolen Factory Mill. How would we connect it? It seems like it'd be going through East Market Street, and then you'd have to walk up to connect over to Riverfront Park. I was wondering if there was any kind of contingency plan or any thoughts about how. I'm sure this would be very unpopular, but easements on the river and connecting these things, if that was to be pursued, would that have been a part of the plan or just something not in scope?
Yeah, that's really outside the scope of this specific project, but it is something that there are at least some discussions on, even though I don't think there's really a clearly identified solution that everybody sort of agreed upon to pursue. So as far as the connectivity between Riverview Park and the wool factory, I think that probably needs to occur regardless of the location of the bridge. Those are just two very sort of popular locations. And then there's also the section of the Ravana Trail that there's a gap between where it connects at Riverview Park or where it connects basically at the wool factory on the other side of the wool factory going over Moore's Creek. So
Okay.
I think it is an important connection. We talked.
Outskirts though. Gotcha.
Yeah, but something that will probably continue to be a discussion, and I'm hopeful that eventually we'll find a way to make that happen.
We'll see. Well, thanks, Sandy. I guess any other questions since I was asking a bunch on this one?
Sandy, you might have mentioned this and I missed it. What is the timeline on making the decision and who's making that decision?
Yeah, the MPO Policy Board has been provided with all of the information, and they've been, we had a special meeting on March 10th to kind of review all of the feedback that we've heard from all of the different forums that we've received it. So they should be making a decision at their meeting on, their meeting was supposed to be on March 23rd. We're trying to find a contingency date, but they should be making a decision at their regular policy board meeting in March. I think it's going to be on the 24th, but I'm waiting on confirmation on that date.
Any more questions regarding the Ravana River Bicycle and Bridge project? Okay, so as I've mentioned, and Sandy as well, we continue to receive public comment. The MPO had a special session March 10th, maybe the 24th, in which the policy board approves the selection of the projects to proceed. Smart scale pre-application submittals are due at the end of the month, and the final application submittal is due August 1. So between now and the end of the month, MPO staff will be preparing those preliminary applications, and if permitted or granted, then we will pursue for the final application submittal.
Do you need anything from us on this, or is this just informational?
I think it was just informational purposes for tonight.
I was hoping we could vote on the type of bridge, but hey, already did that, I guess, in the survey. All right, I guess if nothing else, Ryan, on this topic for smart scales?
Yes, that's all that I have. Mr.
Awesome.
Chair.
Thank you. All right, moving to the next one then, Unified Planning Work Program, Sandy and Ryan.
Sure, I will turn this over to Sandy. And Sandy, you can let me know when I should flip the screen, but I'll turn it over to you.
Sure. Okay. So, so some of you probably recall we go through this process every year, and that's basically developing a work program that shows what we are going to do with the resources that we get to fund the MPO. And so we have to develop a work plan, and we have to submit that to VDOT and FHWA and DRPT and FTA and get approval, just to make sure that what we're doing supports the overall goals of the federal and state agencies that fund us. So just a couple of background tidbits for you all. The MPO is funded through two federal programs, the Federal Highway Administration and the Federal Transit Administration. And those are funded with an 80-10-10 match. So the federal sources provide 80% of our funding, and then the state sources, the state departments, which are VDOT and the Department of Rail and Public Transportation, they provide 10%, and then we provide a local match of 10%. We are federally required to identify activities to be undertaken using this funding in the annual work program. So every year we develop a draft among staff and present it to you all as the committees for feedback, and then the policy board ultimately will approve what the funding allocation is, and then we'll send those up to the state and federal agencies for their review and basically to check off and say, yes, this is consistent. I don't have the budget allocations just yet for FY23. So we're basing some of our funding decisions on assuming that we're going to be funded at a similar level as we were this previous year. So our funding for this year was $321,000. This is not something that we request. This is amount that is developed based on our population and the funding structure that filters down from FHWA and FTA. So they tell us how much funding we're going to get. And usually, you know, when we're not adjusting based on census changes every 10 years, the funding is going to be pretty similar from one year to the next. And then one of the things that you will see when you look at the draft work program is that there's going to be another line item that I think it's called a VDOT SPR. So that's VDOT State Planning and Research Funding. And so that's going to show up in our overall budget because that's an additional resource that goes to support the MPO, but that's not funding that goes through our staff that supports VDOT staff that, you know, that work on the projects alongside with us. So there's one thing that I do want to mention, and that's that one unique thing about the FY23 program is that normally we try to spend all of the funding that we're given each year to do programming within the same fiscal year, but because of some of the staffing shortages that we've had the previous 2 years, we are going to be also incorporating rollover from actually going back to FY21 and FY22 into the upcoming FY23 work program. So even though typically we would have about $320,000 give or take based on those annual adjustments between fiscal years, we're going to have more resources because we weren't able to utilize all of our funding in fiscal year 21 and fiscal year 22. And so that's going to show up as some additional funding to support our programs. There's a little bit of a difference between the types, and just for anybody who's really curious is that, you know, there's a passive rollover that is available through the FHWA funding sources. And what that means is if we just don't spend all of our money when we get to the end of the fiscal year, we don't have to do anything. We'll get whatever the balance of the funding is that remains in 2 fiscal years. So we had a little bit left over, about $35,000 left over from fiscal year 21. We don't get it in fiscal year 22, but it's automatically going to be rolled into our funding amount that is allocated for FY23. And then if we want the funding to be available in the next fiscal year, so we want FY22 funding that we're not going to be able to utilize because we haven't had staff that's been billing to the MPO because we've had some significant vacancies for periods of time, we have to go through an active process of de-obligating that funding in the FY22 work program, showing where we are reducing our budgets for some of those programs in order to actively program it into the next fiscal year in FY23. So we've done that. Ryan, you can go ahead and go to the next slide.
Sure.
So what we are showing you tonight is basically what we have drafted for the FY23 work program. And it shows what we are estimating for what we're going to receive for FY23 funding, in addition to these rollover amounts. So you'll see that in the funding source in FY21 in that second line that says FY21 PL passive rollover, that's the funding amount that goes through sort of the FHWA and VDOT channels. You'll see we have $35,000 from FY21. And then from FY22, we are planning, pending guidance from the policy board, to actively roll over an additional $70,000. And then on the Federal Transit Administration side, assuming we have a similar funding level in FY23 that we had in FY22, we'll have just under $110,000, and then we're going to be actively rolling over an additional $26,000 from that. And that's all based on where we have been build down programs to date, on initiatives that were kind of identified as maybe not being as important to the MPO Policy Board, and just looking at what we have staff capacity to complete prior to the end of the year. So you'll see if you go down to the line that says PL plus FTA total, what we are anticipating to have for our MPO programming for our internal staff and direct costs goes up from about $320,000 based on what we would normally get for one fiscal year to $453,000. And this actually works out pretty well for us because we are going into a 2-year update of the long range transportation plan. And so this gives us some opportunities to think about how we can utilize consultants to support some of the staff work that we're doing to prepare the long range transportation plan and make sure that we are developing that thoughtfully and cohesively and robustly. And then you'll see, like I said in the previous slide, that additional line that's under the PL and FTA total, that just adds in the resources that BDOT is committing to their staff to support the program. And then Ryan, do you want to go ahead? So that's the funding source. And then Ryan, I'm going to let you go ahead and talk about what it is that we're planning to do program-wise with our annual budget for FY23.
All right, Ghost, can I ask a quick question, Sandy?
Mm-hmm.
These all of our amounts, are they purely for staff support, or do they include operational money also, like building or planning and that type of thing?
It's not for infrastructure. We really don't have the kinds of resources for like infrastructure. So, I don't know that there's any rule against it, but there are MPOs who are larger, who get funding for, to identify their infrastructure projects that they want to pursue and have a little bit more autonomy over programming and prioritizing that funding. We're not big enough to be one of those MPO programs. So this is mostly for our planning purposes. We can use it for other things like hiring consultants to support work, but this is really for like planning and research and studies and that kind of thing.
Okay. Thank you.
Sandy, do you have a sense at this point of what types of activities you're thinking the consultant would do versus the MPO staff, or still thinking through that?
Yeah, we're still kind of thinking through that. One of the things we want to do before we finish this fiscal year is get a really good handle on the scope for the long range transportation plan. And I think that will help feed into the process. So I have a couple of thoughts of where consultants could plug in. One of those could be around, do a really robust public engagement and public information sharing, utilizing consultants to help sort of guide and develop some of the feedback tools or survey tools that we implement, or just creating sort of informational items that can be used to help people better understand the long range transportation planning process. We could also look at how they could provide stronger support on the more technical side with technical analysis, and provide, support as far as modeling what the impacts of different improvements might be for the area. So I think we really need to sit down with our state departments that will provide some of that technical support in lieu of retaining a consultant, and determine where we think we can get the most value from consultant services.
Thanks. And the only other question I had is that it mentions in the long range transportation plan scoping part that y'all got a grant from OIPI to develop a new project prioritization process. Is that the development of that something that's going to come through CTAC and the policy board, or is that something staff is going to develop?
Yeah, no, I think we want to really work on making sure that we're getting buy-in for the process that we implement, as we go through it. So we are planning to engage you all and MPO TAC and the policy board as we go through it. One of my hopes in doing all of the scoping and having the opportunity to utilize consultants is that we can develop a really clear and transparent and easy to follow process that is easy to explain, especially since it's such a long project to complete, so that if there is transition, there's not a huge sort of learning curve to get people on board if there has to be some transition along the way. So that's one of my goals, is to just have a really clearly documented process that we can follow.
Okay, I will just briefly highlight some of the activities in the draft 2023 UPWP. The MPO is looking to allocate roughly $27,000 or $27,000 to Smart Scale, which we'll see here. MPO boundary analysis. This is coming from the 2020 census. Based on that report, there may be an adjustment to the boundary that's needed. So there is about $12,000 for that. As Sandy just mentioned, the development of the 2050 long-range transportation plan, approximately $206,000. The development of the 24-27 TIP, Transportation Improvement Program. The Regional Transit Governance Study. Here, roughly $33,000. One map. Here, approximately $36,000. And then on-call consultant programming.
Ryan, do you want to explain what the One Map project is?
Sure, Sandy. So basically, One Map is a project that I believe initiated circa 2019, and both the city and the county, the idea was to have a understanding or a definition for the various facilities, a common definition for all the various facilities related to bicycle and pedestrian activities. I believe one time the city was the main host or the main project holder of that One Map. And then the county took it over, I believe, for a period of time. And so now for this upcoming fiscal year, the MPO is looking to sort of close that out and at some point make a decision on what that project is going to look like, whether it's going to be used for planning purposes or whether it would be something that the public could use. But it's basically a map showing bicycle and pedestrian facilities with a shared or common definition among the facilities. Any questions regarding any of those work items?
That's terrible.
Okay.
I think we're good. Cool. Anything else on Unified Planning Work Program?
I do not. I'll defer to Sandy in case she
No,
has.
we just wanted to present to you with a draft of what we had identified. I think this year a lot of the things on the work program are things that are required, like the TIP and the long range transportation plan, but mostly just to make sure that you all see it before it will come back in May for approval by the policy board, and you'll be asked to potentially vote on a recommendation. So just wanted to hear if you all had any feedback or thoughts that we should maybe incorporate before we develop the final version.
Any comments anyone would like to share about the Unified Planning Work Program? If not, I don't have anything to enter into an official record, Sandy, but I would mention that it's nice that they're able to roll over the funding. So that's nice flexibility. Not sure if I've seen that often in public policy. All right, excellent. Then I think we're good to go for staff updates.
Yes.
All
So,
right.
Mr. Chair and committee members, as you know, you all have been meeting virtually for quite some time now, but there is a possibility within, say, the next month or two that the City of Charlottesville and the TJPDC return to in-person meetings. I think that decision has not been made final yet, but we just wanted to alert you that that's come up for discussion.
Is there a possibility of hybrid meetings? Has that been discussed?
There,
Yeah.
there could be in the short term. I think what's going to happen is that the commission is going to, so we're located in Charlottesville, so we follow their emergency order, which extends for 6 months. Our commission is going to review basically what the policy is for the commission, and we'll create a policy that applies to all of the committees that are within the TJPDC sort of administrative oversight. So there could be some opportunities in the short run to have hybrid meetings. Once Charlottesville's statute is no longer in place, though, we are going to be required to comply with the state requirements to have the meetings in person. So if you recall, we did go through the process of adopting a remote participation policy that applies for certain circumstances. So we'll try at the next meeting to make sure that we're reviewing that remote participation policy, that everybody understands what that looks like, and make sure that we provide whatever flexibility we are able to for remote participation and hybrid participation in committees.
Yeah, I recall that from like 6 months ago or something, and it was, I think it's based on illness and something like that. If I remember correctly, Marty.
I'm not sure, to be honest with you, but I know people have talked to me in my other committees about having hybrid meetings. Some people like to be remote. They find it easy to attend the meetings, depending on the time and how it coincides with their workday.
Yeah, I understood on that. I was just trying to recall what was discussed last time, but if there's nothing else on this, any other questions before we proceed? Looks like we'll learn more next time. All right, moving to the next one, future discussion topics. Anyone have any questions or anything for the staff or the fellow committee members relevant to CTAC?
One question I have, which maybe this would have been better in the program work or the WP discussion, but I know under the new federal infrastructure law, there are some like grant programs like the electric vehicle program that the MPO can apply for grants under. Have you all been looking at some of those opportunities? Is that something you'll be thinking of? I know you said you've been kind of short staffed for a little while, so I don't know if that's a factor.
Yeah, I think it's something we probably want to pursue, at least as far as understanding the information and the opportunities. I don't think we've identified specific projects, but one thought I had is at an upcoming, policy board meeting, if not maybe one of, an MPO technical committee is trying to get a speaker to come in and provide some better information on what opportunities might be available in our area. I know both the city and Albemarle County both have some kind of specific infrastructure bills that they're considering or looking into to see if they'll support some of their programs. So I think generally in the area there's some awareness, but I think it's something we do need to spend a little bit more time on.
Thanks, Andy. Thanks, Travis. Any other questions or points of discussion?
Or was that something you wanted to discuss at a future meeting, Travis?
Yeah, it's fine for now. I mean, I don't know if you just want to let us know if you do bring someone in to talk to the policy board in case you want to watch that discussion.
Great. Any other questions or points of discussion? All right, I think we're ready to move on. I still don't see any new names, so matters of the public. I think we're good to go. Is that correct, Sandy? Thank you. All right. Well, I think this is the first time I've ever seen this. Of course, it's my last time to end early. So I guess we can call this meeting to a close. It's adjourned at, what is it, 8:08 p.m. Thanks all for attending, and congrats, Lee and Donna. Good luck in running the next session, and see you guys next time.
Thank you all. Have a good night.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
See you
Yes.
guys.